The box was on the top shelf of the utility closet, behind the water heater, pushed back against the wall behind a row of paint cans that had not been moved in years. Marcus Holt found it on a Saturday morning in October of 2021, when he was cleaning out his father's house after the stroke. He was 41 years old. He had been inside that closet 100 times as a child. He had never noticed the box. It was a metal lockbox, olive green, the kind sold at hardware stores in the 1980s for documents or cash. It was not locked. The latch had rusted open at some point, or had never been locked at all. Marcus opened it the way you open something you expect to contain old tax returns or a deed. He sat down on the utility room floor and did not get up for a long time. Inside the box were three things: a woman's bracelet, gold tone, with a small charm in the shape of a hummingbird, a folded piece of lined notebook paper with a name and an address written on it in his father's handwriting, an address in Carver County, Georgia, that Marcus did not recognize, and a Georgia driver's license, laminated, slightly warped, belonging to a woman named Adele Marie Greer, who in the photograph was young and smiling, and who had been missing from Harlan, Georgia, since the spring of 1993. Marcus Holt sat on that floor for 40 minutes. Then he called 911. But to understand what it cost him to make that call, and what that call gave back to a family who had stopped expecting to receive anything, you first have to understand who Adele Greer was and what Harlan, Georgia, was in 1993. Adele Marie Greer was 31 years old. She worked the early shift at the Carver County Health Department as a licensed practical nurse, a position she had held for 4 years and earned through 2 years of night school while raising her daughter alone. Her daughter, Brianna, was 7 in the spring of 1993, and Adele's entire life was organized around that fact. She packed Brianna's lunch the night before. She had a neighbor, a retired woman named Ida Mae Perkins, who kept Brianna in the mornings until the school bus came. She left for work at 6:10 a.m. every morning, without exception. She was, by every account, not a person who left things undone. Her supervisor at the health department, a woman named Gloria Taft, told investigators that Adele had never once called in sick in 4 years, that she arrived early and stayed late without complaint, and that the week before she disappeared, she had organized a blood pressure screening for the senior center on her own time. Gloria Taft said, "She wasn't somebody who just didn't show up. That wasn't her." Adele had grown up in Harlan, the daughter of a grocery store owner named James Greer and his wife Louise. She had graduated from Harlan High School, gone to work young, come back to Harlan when Brianna was born. She knew the town the way you know a place you have never fully left, its back roads, its personalities, its unspoken rules about who you were polite to and why. Harlan had a population in 1993 of just under 4,000. It was the kind of town where the same families had run the same businesses for 3 generations, where everybody's business was also everybody else's, where social position was maintained through a web of relationships that ran through the church, the Lions Club, the school board, and the Chamber of Commerce. It was, in the language of the genre, a town where everybody knew everybody. That meant everyone knew Thomas Holt. Thomas Holt was 49 in 1993. He was the owner and operator of Holt Electrical Services, which had held the service contract for the county school system for 11 years. He was a deacon at First Baptist. He coached Little League in the spring and donated the lights for the fields every 2 years when they needed replacing. He had been on the Harlan City Council since 1988. He was, in the estimation of nearly everyone who knew him, a pillar. He was also the man Adele Greer had begun seeing in late 1992, quietly, without announcement. in the way that relationships between unmarried women and married men tend to proceed in small towns where the rules about such things are understood without being stated. Thomas Holt had been separated from his wife Sandra since 1991. The divorce was ongoing, contested, expensive, and, in a town of 4,000 where the couple's business interests were intertwined with the school board contract, extremely inconvenient to make public. Marcus Holt, Thomas's son, was 13 in 1993. He knew his father was seeing someone. He did not know who. Adele Greer did not report for work on the morning of April 19, 1993. Ida Mae Perkins arrived at 5:55 a.m. to watch Brianna and found the house dark, Adele's car in the driveway and no answer at the door. She waited. At 6:25, she called the health department. At 7:10, she called the sheriff's office. Deputy Carl Reeves was first on scene at 7:34 a.m. The front door was unlocked. The coffee maker in the kitchen had cycled off, but the carafe was still warm. A coffee mug sat on the counter, used, rinsed, but not washed. Brianna was asleep in her bedroom. Her lunch for school was already packed and on the kitchen counter. Her mother was not in the house. Nothing was disturbed. There was no sign of a struggle. Adele's purse was gone. Her keys were gone. But her car was in the driveway, and the car's engine was cold. Brianna Greer woke up and asked Ida Mae where her mother was. Ida Mae said she didn't know, but that everything was going to be fine. It was 7:41 a.m. By noon, James and Louise Greer were at the house. By 3 p.m., a search of the area around Adele's neighborhood had begun. By evening, it had expanded to the county roads running south and east of Harlan, the two areas Adele most frequently drove. 17 volunteers joined the official search by the second day. By the end of the week, the number had grown to 40. Adele's purse was found on April 23rd, 4 days after she disappeared, in a drainage channel off County Road 14, 8 miles south of Harlan. Her keys were inside it. Her wallet was inside it with her cash and her credit cards. Her driver's license was not inside it. Sheriff's investigator Dale Mossey was assigned the case on April 20th. He was 44, a 16-year veteran of the Carver County Sheriff's Office, and his first note in the case file, written the morning after the purse was found, read, "She didn't run. Someone took the license as a trophy or identifier. Male, known to her, opportunity to remove it from scene at leisure." He had one name in his notebook by the end of the first week. Thomas Holt. Two people had independently told Mossey, without prompting, that Adele and Thomas Holt had been involved. A co-worker at the health department, a neighbor 2 houses down who had seen Thomas Holt's truck parked on Adele's street late on more than one occasion. Mossey drove past the Holt Electrical Services building on a Tuesday morning. He noted the truck. He noted that Thomas Holt was at work, visible through the window, talking to a customer. He requested an interview. Thomas Holt agreed immediately. He sat across from Mossey in a conference room at the sheriff's office for 90 minutes. He confirmed that he and Adele had been seeing each other. He said the relationship had ended in March, amicably, by mutual agreement. He said he had last seen her on March 31st. He said he had been home the night of April 18th, the last night Adele was known to be in her house, watching television. His son Marcus, he said, could confirm that. Marcus was 13. He confirmed it. Thomas Holt returned to his office. He was at the Little League field that Saturday. He donated the concession stand supplies for the end-of-season tournament in May. Mossey did not believe him. He wrote it plainly in the case file, "Holt is lying about the relationship ending." Timeline has gaps. Motive exists, divorce proceedings, exposure, custody. He requested a warrant to examine Holt's financial records for any unexplained transactions around the date of the disappearance. The request was reviewed by the county prosecutor's office and declined insufficient probable cause. Mossy appealed the decision informally. He was told the same thing. He drove County Road 14 every week for 2 months. He knocked on the doors of every property within half a mile of where the purse had been found. Nobody had seen anything. Nobody had seen Adele. Nobody had seen Thomas Holt's truck on that road. In November of 1993, with no physical evidence, no body, and no witness willing to place Holt at the scene, the case was moved to inactive status. Mossy wrote one final note in the file before it was archived. It said, "Thomas Holt. We stopped too soon." By 1998, 5 years had passed. Brianna Greer was 12. She had gone to live with her grandparents, James and Louise, in the house where Adele had grown up. James Greer kept a flyer about Adele in the window of his grocery store until the store closed in 2002. Louise lit a candle for her daughter every Sunday at First Baptist, the same church where Thomas Holt had been a deacon, until the Sunday she was simply unable to make herself go back. By 2003, 10 years in, Brianna was in college. She had chosen nursing, and the people who knew why did not ask her to explain it. She called the Carver County Sheriff's Office every year on April 19th. She was always polite. The answers were always the same. By 2010, Dale Mossy had been retired for 3 years. He kept a copy of the case file in a 3-ring binder in his home office. His wife had stopped asking him to move it. His daughter had grown up hearing the name Adele Greer the way some children hear the names of distant relatives, present in the household without being fully explained. Thomas Holt had remarried in 1997. He remained active in Harlan's civic life. His electrical business had expanded. His son Marcus had grown up, moved to Atlanta at 22, come back to Harlan at 35 to take over the business when Thomas had a mild heart attack. He moved into his father's house to help with his care. He knew his father the way a son knows a man, imperfectly, with love, with gaps he had learned not to look at too directly. Then came the stroke, in September of 2021, and the house that needed cleaning, and the utility closet, and the box behind the water heater that had not been moved since 1993. If this kind of work matters to you, the work of not letting cases like Adele's disappear into the archive, take a second to like this video and subscribe. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's get back to what Marcus Holt did next. The 911 call Marcus Holt placed on October 9, 2021, lasted 11 minutes. The recording has not been publicly released, but the responding deputy, in his incident report, noted that the caller was calm and that he stated clearly from the first moment that he believed the items he had found were connected to a missing persons case from 1993. He provided the name Adele Greer without being prompted. He said he recognized the name because his father had mentioned it once, years ago, a passing reference to a woman he had known, and that the name had stayed with Marcus in the way names sometimes do when something in a conversation doesn't fit the frame around it. He said he did not know what his father had done. He said he believed the box told him. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation Cold Case Unit was notified the same afternoon. Special Agent Renata Coles, 39, was assigned within 48 hours. She had worked 11 cold cases. She had closed 4 of them. She drove to Harlan on a Wednesday and sat with the box for an hour before she touched anything. The hummingbird bracelet was confirmed by Brianna Greer, now 35, a registered nurse working in Augusta, as belonging to her mother. She identified it from a photograph, without hesitation. She told Agent Coles that she had looked for that bracelet after her mother disappeared, that she had thought it was lost. The driver's license was Adele's. The address on the notebook paper, written in Thomas Holt's handwriting, corresponded to a parcel of land on County Road 14, a parcel that had been sold in 1988 to a private buyer and resold twice since, currently used for hay storage. It was 600 feet from where Adele's purse had been found in the drainage channel in April of 1993. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed on the parcel on November 3, 2021. The search took 2 days. Adele Greer was found on November 4, 2021. She had been there for 28 years. Thomas Holt was arrested at Harlan Regional Medical Center, where he was still receiving rehabilitation care following his stroke, on November 12, 2021. He was 77 years old. He was charged with murder in the first degree. He said nothing when the detective entered the room. He turned his face toward the window. The arrest became public within hours. Harlan is a town of 4,000 people, and by evening, the parking lot of First Baptist had a cluster of congregants standing in it, without a clear reason for being there, speaking quietly. A woman who had served on the city council with Thomas Holt for 6 years told the local news station that she felt as though the ground had shifted under the town. A man who had played on his Little League team in 1986 said he had gone home and sat in his car for an hour before he could go inside. Dale Mossy was reached by phone that evening. He was 73 years old, in Valdosta, where he had moved after his wife died. The reporter from the Carver County Courier asked him how he felt. He said, "I wrote it in the file in 1993. I wrote his name. We stopped too soon, and I always knew we stopped too soon. I just didn't know if I'd live long enough for someone to finish it." Thomas Holt died in March of 2023, before the case went to trial. He was 78. He never entered a plea. He never spoke publicly about Adele Greer. He never told Marcus anything. Brianna Greer was 7 years old when her mother packed her lunch for school and turned off the coffee maker and was gone before morning. She grew up in her grandparents' house, on her grandfather's street, in the town where her mother had grown up, and she became a nurse the way her mother had been a nurse, and she called the sheriff's office every April 19th for 17 years. She was 35 when Agent Coles called. She was at work. She stepped outside into the parking lot of the Augusta Hospital where she had worked for 4 years and stood in the cold November air and listened. She did not speak for a long time after Coles finished. Then she said, "Can I tell my grandmother?" Louise Greer was 84 years old and still living in Harlan. She had outlasted the case and the man who had made it and the years that had passed between. Brianna drove to Harlan that evening and told her. Marcus Holt has not spoken publicly about finding the box, or about his father, or about the call he made. He left Harlan shortly after the arrest and has not returned. He is, by any measure, also a victim of what Thomas Holt did. A man who spent 41 years as a son to someone he could not fully see, who then had to become the person who ended it. There is no clean category for what he is in this story. He is the reason the story ended. That is what he will carry. Thomas Holt shoveled the concession stand, donated the lights for the fields, sat in the deacon's chair, and shook hands at the Chamber of Commerce luncheons for 28 years after he put Adele Greer in the ground on County Road 14. He kept her driver's license and her bracelet in a metal box behind the water heater. What that keeping meant, whether it was guilt or ownership or something darker and without a name, he took with him when he died. What Adele left behind was a daughter who became a nurse and never stopped calling. A grandmother who lit a candle every Sunday until she couldn't. A retired detective who wrote a name in a file in 1993 and spent 28 years knowing he had been right. And a son who opened a box on a Saturday morning and chose, without anyone asking him to choose, to tell the truth about his father. What does justice look like when the person charged with delivering it dies before the verdict? What do you owe a child who loses a parent to violence and then spends her entire adult life waiting for the system to give her something back? And what does it say about the towns we live in and the people we trust that the man who did this was the one handing out the Community Service Awards? Justice found Adele Greer after 28 years. Stories like hers exist because someone kept looking, and someone else finally opened a box. If you believe truth is worth pursuing no matter how long it takes, subscribe so you don't miss the next case. More solved cold cases are waiting in the description below. Thank you for being here.